Hey everyone, hope you're staying warm. This might get a little ranty, fair warning. It's something that's been on my mind a while. Because we've just seen so much in recent years that's just gotten so much worse. Just all of the, well, you know what I mean, the tribalism online, the division, just all of the one group of people trying to kick off another group of people, and people doing all sorts of crappy things to individuals. And a lot of people are kind of wondering how we got to this point. And I don't think this is the sole reason for it, but I think it's a big one. Because it used to be, if you were on the internet, you were pretty anonymous. You know, some of us posted under our real names, but most people would choose a handle or some other sort of persona or something like that. And yeah, there were problems. These problems have always been there. The trolls, the ones who were just out to cause trouble, the ones who were out to, just bully people and things like that. It's always been a problem, and it always will be. But not anything like it is today. And I think that ending online anonymity was a very big part of that. And this is something, I guess between 10 and 15 years ago, there was the big push for this. And the whole idea was, we could end, all of these trolls and everyone else if we just make people post under their real name, because then, they won't be able to stick their necks out like that. Well, of course, it didn't work out that way, did it? All that it meant was that the rest of us, were under a risk of things like swatting and, people, get PO'd at you online, and then they call your employer and make up all sorts of crap about you. So I've got a pair of articles here. I just went looking for a couple of typical ones. I'm not saying that these in particular, were a big problem, but they do cover basically how the conversation at the time was going. Starting with this one, will ending anonymity online end cyberbullying? Spoiler alert, it won't, as we all know. Is online anonymity a license for freedom or for hatred? Sorry for the edit, had to take care of something right quick, but yeah, it was pretty much Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, now Meta, who was behind the push for this. It says Zuckerberg made a strong statement on putting an end to online anonymity as the first real step in curbing cyberbullying. And this is quoting Zuckerberg. I think anonymity on the internet has to go away. People behave a lot better when they have their real names down. Yeah. I think people hide behind anonymity and they feel like they can say whatever they want behind closed doors. Yeah, so, going out on a limb, I think he might have been just a little bit on the wrong side about that. And we also have Eric Schmidt, then CEO of Google, who said, the only way to manage this is true transparency and no anonymity. In a world of asynchronous threats, it's too dangerous for there not to be some way to identify you. We need a verified name service for people. Governments will demand it. Yeah, that's an argument we've seen in a lot of other places, like movie ratings. That's a big one. Oh, well, we have to put, the movie ratings on movies because otherwise government would do it. No, they wouldn't. They got the First Amendment. They can't. We saw the same thing in the 90s with video games. Bill Clinton made this big deal. Oh, we've got to, put the screws on video games because, kids are playing stuff that's for adults, and we need to put, this is where they came up with all that, E for everyone thing. And so the game companies were like, well, we got to do this because the government's bullying us into it. He wouldn't have been able to do anything. It wouldn't have lasted in court. It's a clear First Amendment violation, but that's always the excuse, because we got to do this, because if we don't, then government will demand it. So, all right, the other one I have is the virtual end of online anonymity And notice this one's back in 2009. I think the other one was from, I'm not sure, 2013, something like that. Maybe earlier, but that's the time frame we're talking about. Talking about the early days of the web when everyone was anonymous, and it says legal precedents are piling up and online anonymity is becoming a thing of the past. Among bloggers, the consensus seems to be that's good news. No, it wasn't. A lot of bloggers were. But that's something else you do, is you kind of pretend that everyone else is on your side. So, like they quote political blogger Catherine McMillan. When someone's just blogging anonymously because of employment concerns or whatever, it doesn't matter. As soon as you use anonymity as a shield to set up hate sites or write outrageous things, you should expect anything and everything to come back at you. Yeah, they were saying out loud at the time what they were gonna do when anonymity was gone, and boy, they did it, didn't they? Now, in fairness to these articles, they do go on and have some quotes from the opposing point of view. So my point here is not that these articles are bad, but the arguments of the anti-anonymity side, which is a side that pretty much won for the most part. Yeah, they didn't work out that. I mean, we've seen really bad things like swatting. You know, people have died from swatting. And how easy would that be, you know, if everyone wasn't, you know, posting under their real names? You know, because back when things were anonymous, you had people posting under your real. I've always posted under my real name. But it was never a problem like that because there was never this culture of, I know who you really are. And because you said, you know, something mean about me in cyberspace, I'm going to do something against you in meat space. There was no real concept of that, so that, I think, more than anything else, led to a lot of the things we're seeing today. The woke culture. If you're politically incorrect, they'll ruin your life. That's their goal. That's their goal, and they can't really do that if you're anonymous. So, and they would use excuses like, well, if you slander someone online, then they need to be able to sue you, right? And how can they sue you if they don't know who you are? Well, there was always ways to find out. You know, the website or whatever form you were posting on had the IP address. You know, you get the court order, they turn the IP address, hand it over. They could find out who you are. They could do that. And they did. That happened. But what it did do is allow things like employers to use your online posts to find out more about you and, oh, I don't like what you say politically, so I'm going to fire you, or I'm not going to give you the job, or whatever. Things that have nothing to do with your job that they'll punish you for, that they wouldn't be able to do if you had posted that anonymously. And so it was really more pseudonymous than anonymous because you were posting under this identity. But if you screwed up and you said a lot of bad things, and then you kind of learned your lesson, well, you could remake yourself. You could drop off that old identity, make a new one, and come in as a new person. And you could have redemption. You don't have redemption anymore. 20-year-old posts are being used against people. You know, something you said when you were, you know, young and stupid that you know better now. They look back at that because there's no anonymity. You know, and they say, oh, that's who you are. That's who you were then. That must be who you are now. And here you're always going to be. And because it's there, the internet is forever. So, yeah, I mean, legally they could find out who you are. But in real life, at least you had plausible deniability. People could at least operate under the assumption that, okay, yeah, I'm going to assume that you're pretty much a good guy other than, you know, what you're posting directly here. And I'll base you on your online persona and what you're putting forward rather than making your past or your real life stuff come back to haunt you. Or, more dangerously, take it to meet space, take it to the real world. You know, call up your employer and lie to your employer and get them to fire you, or, you know, get the police to SWAT you or whatever. And if you look during this time, basically the 90s and the 2000s, that was when the greatest things happened on the internet. Look at the explosion of internet technologies and services and everything. What have we had since this? We've had the rise of big tech. We've had stifling of upstarts. You know, they don't like Parler or someone, and so they say, oh, well, we got to kick them off and we got to deny them services. You know, that's not a problem of not having anonymity per se, but it is a part of the culture that grew up, you know, around the idea of you can't be anonymous on the internet. And so if you get kicked off of Twitter and you go over here to form, you know, this other website, Parler or whatever, well, then they got to shut down that site too. So it's just part of that overall mindset. And what we're seeing with the Twitter files right now is that, yes, government is very involved in this. I mean, you heard it from Eric Schmidt. Government's going to want to do this. Government's going to need this. Yay, government. We need government. Well, read the Twitter files, people. And it's all about, oh, well, I don't like what this post says, so let's get everything we can about this so we can make it look like, you know, Russian propaganda or something like that, or whatever. Get it taken off. Low follower accounts where people were just, you know, tweeting out satire. And the FBI and the CIA are coming in and going, no, we got to kick all these people off. And don't think they were doing it with just Twitter. Don't think they weren't also doing it with Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere else. So, in a lot of ways, I miss the internet of the 90s. Because, yeah, there were issues there. I mean, you've always had the trolls, and things weren't as secure as they are today when practically everything's encrypted. But when you're talking about online discussions, going back to the late 80s, you had a protocol called NNTP, where you had news groups. And this was just a regular internet protocol. Your ISP provided it along with, you know, email and everything else. And so what it was just a bunch of different news groups that were public. You could post to, you could reply to what other people posted, and you were anonymous, or at least pseudonymous. You know, just whatever persona you wanted to put on there. It was decentralized. There wasn't any, you know, central corporation in control of everything. There were Usenet groups that were moderated, but it was for that specific news group, and it was just whatever set of moderators had set that up. You know, they didn't have the power over the rest of it. I mean, I miss that. They had good threading. What is it with YouTube comments and forums and stuff like that they can't do good threading? You know, that was a problem that was solved decades ago. Because NNTP was built for exactly that sort of thing. And it was amazing, the conversations, you know, we had back in the day, on like Sci.Skeptic and Talk.Origins and things like that. If you want to know why I, you know, pretty much came into my YouTube channel knowing so much about evolution and a lot of other, topics, and, particularly evolution versus creation, it was Talk.Origins. It was Usenet where I learned all that. And it was about all sorts of other things too. And there was the stuff on there that was not so great. You know, in the words of John Perry Barlow, we had the debasing and the angelic. And you got to take both of those together. You know, as he said, we cannot separate the air that chokes from the air upon which wings beat. Well, it kind of seems today like we've had our wings clipped, haven't we? So we don't really... I'm not saying let's bring back NNTP, because although it was great in a lot of ways, there were ways where it was problematic. It wasn't encrypted. Like if you wanted to just something like attach a attach a JPEG to it, attach a picture like you do on Twitter. You tweet out something and include a picture with it. It was all text. So the only way you could do that is do that base 64 conversion where the message ends with a bunch of garbage and you had to have a special newsreader that would, turn it into the graphic and things like that, and all these varying standards. If it was, if you were going to try to do anything like a video, you basically forget about it, but anything of any size, you had to break it down into several parts and make it several different messages, and then your newsreader had to understand how to put all those together, and not all of them did that. So I'm not saying bring that back, because there's problems. But if we could have a truly decentralized and anonymous system like that, and I don't mean Mastodon before anyone says that. That's a federated system. That's not the right solution. We're seeing that. That is clearly not the right solution. But if you had a proper decentralized standard solution like NNTP, where anyone could come on and discuss anything with proper replies and threading and everything like that, and also be able to attach pictures and videos and whatever else in a decentralized fashion that wasn't under the control of any one corporation. When you compare that to what big tech is giving us today, it was a heyday. It really was. All of the discussions we had back then, and all of the things we shared, and all of the things we traded, you couldn't do that today. You just couldn't. It would be, oh my God. The things a lot of people said that, they learned their lessons on and shouldn't have to follow them through their life. It was a learning experience for a lot of people. That's kind of what we need again. What we need, that situation where the meat space ideas of, identity, property, propriety, all things like that, just don't apply online. They've artificially squeezed those into our online life, and look at the disaster. Look at the absolute, utmost disaster it has made of a lot of people's lives. So we need to get back to that. We're starting to see a lot of decentralized solutions, proper decentralized, not federated solutions being built out. Hopefully we can have something like that with discussion groups again, where we can get away from this idea that everything we post has to follow us around for the rest of our lives. Everyone has to know who everyone is. We have to open ourselves up to swatting and everything else, where we can go back to online anonymity, where we can be free to discuss whatever we want and have our global conversation without all of the problems of the real world intruding on it. And that's really something I think we have to do for the future of humanity. And I say that without a trace of hyperbole. Because again, I look at everything that happened in the 90s and the early 2000s. Before all this happened, I look at how amazing progress was. And I look at the last 5 or 10 years, and it's night and day, and it's a tragedy. And we need to get it back. So here's hoping we can. Thank you so much for watching. Comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and all of the things I have to do because I am constrained by a single corporation who wants to say, no, we'll do it this way, and if you're not the way, we'll shadow ban you, and we'll do all these mean, nasty, ugly things. And fortunately, we have options. You'll see this on Odyssey. You'll see this on Rumble. And you can also donate. Donate.bogosity.tv. All sorts of different ways. Not only the old-fashioned, fiat way with PayPal, but also cryptocurrency, where you can be anonymous, where you can just, fund whatever you want without it coming back to haunt you. Oh, you funded this guy and we don't like him, so we're going to deplatform you. They don't have to know. I won't tell. I won't even know. I won't even know. Send me some money in Dash. I won't have a clue who you are. It's so beautiful that way. So yes, and you can also go to Patreon or Subscribestar, become a regular subscriber, get all these videos early and ad-free. and other benefits there. Just check the left-hand side of the page for all the things you can get. Thank you so very much for watching. Thanks for letting me rant. Until next time, stay strong and be free.